Have you ever really thought about how far colonial powers were willing to go to change Africa? Because this story will tell you exactly what that looked like. My name is Noreen and this is Real Africa Stories. Back in 1799 in Clapham, London, a group called the Clapham Sect set up something called the African Academy. They were abolitionists, so on the surface it sounds positive. They said they wanted to educate African children and give them opportunities. But when you look a bit closer, you start to see the real intention. These children were brought from Sierra Leone, which Britain had already set up in 1787 as a colony for freed slaves and recaptured Africans. The idea was very clear. They would bring these children to London, teach them Christianity, teach them English ways of thinking, and then send them back to Africa so they could spread that belief system. And when you hear that, you realize this wasn't just about religion. It was about influence and control. Out of around 25 children, most of them never made it home. They died in England, most likely from diseases like measles, in a climate their bodies were not used to. And this is the part that stays with you. One of these children was someone called George Kizell, the son of a Sierra Leonean leader. He died in Clapham and was buried there. Another was Betsy Fowles. She was baptized in a London church in 1805, and she died just 5 days later. The church records also list names like Corker, Thorpe, and Smith. But if you stop and think about that, those were probably not their original names. Those were names given to them. Their African names, their identities were replaced as part of this process. So even in death, you're not just looking at the loss of life, you're looking at loss of identity as well. Now, the Clapham experiment itself failed because most of the children never returned. But the idea behind it did not fail at all. Missionaries continued this work across Africa through the 1800s. They built schools, churches, and institutions. One of the most well-known one is Fura Bay College in Sierra Leone, which was founded in 1827 and went on to educate generations of African leaders. And this is where it becomes more complex, because missionary education did bring literacy. It did create access to formal education. It trained teachers, writers, and leaders. But at the same time, it pushed African languages to the side. It dismissed traditional belief systems, and it created a version of education that centered European ways of thinking. So you ended up with people who were educated, but often caught between two different worlds. If you look at Africa today, you can still see that legacy. Christianity is now one of the largest religions on the continent. Many education systems are still built on missionary foundations. So in one sense, the mission worked. But when you look at identity, culture, and language, you also see what was lost along the way. So let me ask you this. If you take children from their home, change their names, reshape their beliefs, and send them back to influence others, are you spreading faith or are you exercising control? This is the Africa you're not shown, but I am here to show you.